Okay. What is going on, everyone? For anyone who's going to tune in, jump in, anyone's going to watch this later, I really don't know if I can be heard. It'd be nice if I could find a way to see this. Hold on. Because low key, I did not hear. Okay. So it shows that my microphone's working, at least. Boom. Okay. I'm not so sure. Okay. Um, so, anyways, if you read the description down below, actually, if you could, someone can let me know if they can hear me or not. Let me see. Uh, yeah, let me know if you can hear me or not, because it shows that my microphone's working, but coming in, usually I could hear the the countdown starting, but for whatever reason, I didn't hear it this time around. Um, but anyways, so topic of discussion today is just a few thoughts that are kind of running through my mind, seeing that it is 9/11, um, and just certain things that I received today at church that I felt fell in line with something that I was praying about. Um, okay, I might. Hey, my boy, Pinpoint Gaming, you know. I bet. Igor, thank you for jumping in, brother. So, yes, like I said, I just have a few thoughts this Sunday afternoon. Um, like I said, I got out of church, and what they were talking about in church kind of fell in line with something that I felt God gave me on Friday as I was walking my dogs and just praying about some things. Um, but today's service in church um, it was about loving your brother, and to the extent of what how that really, I guess, can go forward. Um, and and it was kind of falling in line with something that I had on Friday, which was, I was contemplating how I'm trying to every now and then, specifically Wednesdays, dive into the book of Proverbs and share wisdom, the same wisdom that I felt that as I read, in my life and helped build me. Um, and I asked God to like speak to me on this and to keep speaking to me, reveal to me something. And what you see here, where it says the law is love, that's what came to me. And immediately, I started thinking, like when I say thinking, I'm more so saying conversating with God, right? And that's that. Is anything outside of the law of Moses, could that also be considered law, right? Because more so I was speaking to the fact that I was reading the book of Proverbs, and it's the book of wisdom, but yet they come off as instructions or commandments for that notion. And just all these thoughts came to me, like all of a sudden I felt the need to, like, all right, hold on, let me look at the definition of the law, and what does law mean, and how can that work and play with what I'm thinking, what I'm gathering here, and more so the fact that there's a scripture that I'm going to go into right quick, and that's that you know there's a story where these lawyers approached Jesus, asking him what is the greatest commandment of all the commandments, and it's his response that intrigues me. But it's always intrigued me, and I've touched on it a few times, but I feel it's key to what I'm trying to break down right here. But anyways, I'm not gonna like go into like all the definitions of what the law means, right? But these are a few definitions so you can follow me here on the definition of law. The first is the system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members, in which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. What stood out to me there is country rules of a country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members. So it's a form of regulation of how to one conducts themselves, right? Another thing I hear shows that I thought spoke to me or stood out to what I was trying to get at is a thing regarding as having the binding force or effect of a formal system of rules. Follow me here. A binding force or effect of formal system of rules, right? Another one that I thought was good was a rule defining correct procedure or behavior in a sport. It's specifically saying sport here, but I felt like it could be to anything. It could be in a sport, in life, in whatever. More so here, I want to focus in on life, right? What the law can be, if translated correctly. So those were a few definitions that stuck out to me. But now going to the scriptures that I'm trying to dig into right quick. So I'm going to start with Mark 12, the book of Mark in the Bible, Mark 12, verses 28 through 31, right? It says, then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, referring to Jesus, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second, like it, is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. That's in the book of Mark, right? And that's particularly following a conversation regarding to the resurrection. But I want to keep moving forward just to kind of define these different moments that he's asked this. These are all different moments he's asked this, and his response is similar in every single moment. Then the second one is in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 28. And it says, and behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to them, what is written in the law? What is regarding of it? So he answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have answered rightly. Do this, and you shall live. What stood out to me about that particular moment is the man, or this lawyer, is asking about how to inherit eternal life, right? And then Jesus simply asked him a question back, which he's famous for doing, right? He'll answer your question with another question, and your answer is usually what he's looking to expound upon, right? So he asked him the question, what is written in the law? What is your reading of it? And the man answers, this lawyer answers the same very thing that Jesus answers in Mark, as we just saw, and in Matthew, as we're going to see. And then he says, you have answered rightly. Do this, and you shall live. His response is about the now, not just eternal life, but about now. So the question was about eternal life, and Jesus is saying, this is how you get eternal life, but this is also how you shall live now, not in the future tense of eternity, but right now in the present tense of physically, right? Follow me here. And then the last one is in the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 34 through 40. And it says, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, this specific scripture came to me, that was the first one that came to me when I asked God, like, how does the book of Proverbs relate to the law, whatever. So what's interesting is that verse 40, when it says, on these two commandments hang all the law of Moses, and the prophets. Any instruction and commandment given by any of the prophets, hang these two commandments. Two commandments that are actually three, if you break them down. And that's that. It's love your God, love the Lord your God. That's one. Then love your neighbor and love yourself. Right? Because it says, and the second is just like it. You should love your neighbor as yourself. So meaning you have to love yourself. You have to love your neighbor and you have to love God. These three things, even though it says two commandments, but it's really three, are what hang on all of the law and all of the prophets. What does that mean? What am I getting at? In the previous scripture, he says, you have answered rightly, do this and you shall live, right? So pretty much, if you live your life knowing and what's the word I'm looking for? Intentionally to love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself. And that word neighbor, I need you to understand, is like it's a broad word. It's not like that your neighbor is your family. That's like your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your spouse, your kids, your strangers, your people around you. That's a very broad word. So what's interesting about that, what I'm trying to get at is when you really break down the law of God or the law of Moses that God gave to his people, if you break down all the instructions given to you by the prophets, such as Solomon and David in the Psalms, or the book of Proverbs, or even Jesus himself when he's given instruction, right? Because he's also a prophet. All these things are given with three things in mind, and that's how to love God, how to love people, and how to love yourself. These aren't just rules given to follow for no reason at all. These, or just for the benefit of being obedient to God. No, these laws, these regulations, these rules are a benefit unto yourself and those around you as well. I was this one brother I was following has this acronym for the word Bible, and it's basic instructions before leaving Earth. And I thought that was neat because, in fact, it is that. When you look at the Word of God, it's their instructions on how to live your life that benefit you, that benefit your friends, your family, those around you, and that for sure obviously benefit God. Because in any relationship, it's give and take. It's give and take. It's not just one-sided. So that's what I want to share with you today. Because we're living in times where there's a lot going on, a lot of chaos, a lot of wild things happening, and it's easy to get sucked into the vacuum of freaking out over the things that are happening around you, or almost creating walls because you're afraid, and it's easier to be, I guess, self-centered or to look just to concern yourself about yourself rather than, be more selfish than it is to be more selfless, and not to say that you can't. Again, it's not about not loving yourself, because he was clear, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So you have to love yourself for sure, but you also do have to love your neighbor, right? And doing these things, you also have to love God, right? So all I could say is that, one, I see myself constantly getting sucked into things that, in the end of the day, our distractions don't really benefit me or my neighbors or God for that matter. But what I will say is for that reason, I will apologize if I've ever been out of line. But I do intend to be intentional about these three things, and that's how can I love God more? How can I love my neighbor more? And how can I love myself more? And I could only hope that you who's watching, I challenge you to try and do the same thing. How can you love God more? How can you love the people around you more? Your neighbors, your friends, your people that you know, your acquaintances, your co-workers, um, and your family. How can you love them more? And then how can you love yourself more? When you look at instructions in life, what I'm trying to, again, I want you guys to look at it from the lens of something that'll benefit you, something that could benefit those around you, and that can benefit your relationship with God as well. And that's with anything, any kind of instruction in life, not yes, specific to the word of God, but also just anything else, any other instruction that's ever been given to you, any type of advice, that's been given to you. Look at it from that lens: is how does it benefit you, or how does it allow you to love yourself, or does it allow you to love yourself? Does it allow you to love your neighbor, and does it allow you to love God? If any of those three things are missing in what's being told to you, you might want to think twice about it. You might really want to think twice about it. If it doesn't allow you to love yourself, if it doesn't allow you to love your neighbor, and if it doesn't allow you to love God, really think about your actions. If those three things aren't in alignment with what you're being told to do or what you're about to do. That being said, that's just something I wanted to share today for this Sunday. One of the thoughts that I wanted to kind of just get into, just because it is Sunday and I feel I have to share what God is sharing with me with others. But with that being said, it is 9/11, and I guess that's the other thing too why this came to mind is or I guess one of the things that's running through my mind is like, in a time where it almost seems like we're all divided. There's this tension between a lot of people, especially in America. This obviously refers to those living in the United States. And I want to look back to that time, because it seems like at least then there was this sense of unity, or this sense of harmony for that matter, that you just don't see these days. And I don't want to say that it takes for things like that to happen, for unity to happen. It shouldn't have to come to that. Sometimes I guess apparently it does, but that moment definitely brought a sense of unity in the country, a sense of empathy and sympathy for people, for your neighbors, whoever they may be. I remember I was in school. I want to say I was in sixth grade. I was in sixth grade when it happened. And I remember like all the students were in class, but like the teacher hadn't came in. We were all there just, being kids, probably like joking around, doing silly, goofy stuff, whatever. And then I remember the teacher coming in. Yeah, back in those days, the teacher would come in with it was almost like a table on wheels, and then there was like this big TV. We didn't have flat screens then, and if we did, our schools definitely didn't have them. But it was like the big TV box wheeled in, and putting on the news, and the teacher puts on the channel. And here we are. It's like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're watching the news. And one of the towers had already gotten hit, and I just remember like seeing all the chaos on TV, looking at my teacher, and he's a grown man, and he's breaking down, tearing, and some of the kids couldn't grasp the reality of what had happened. And, back then, he, just took command or took his authority and, shut them up, but also gave them the reasoning to why, like, hey, this is a moment of seriousness, like, even though you're kids, you guys have to come to grasp with the reality of what's happening here. Um, you know, and sure enough, then the classroom stood silent, and everybody's just tuned into the TV, watching what's happening, um, and that was like for the whole day in school. Like I remember it. I want to say they let us out early, but for the whole time we were there, it was just all the kids tuned into what's happening on the TV. And then I remember the next thing the next plane crash into the other tower, um, and yeah, it just and then the next thing you know is you're seeing all these, um, fire departments and police departments from all over the country just going over there to unite in this one cause of saving lives, and it was something to see as a kid, like just this unity happening, everybody coming together, standing up to the occasion, like, um, and I just remember, like, at that moment that the idea was that this is what Americans do. We rise to the occasion. We, no matter what part of the earth we come from, or our ethnicity, our heritages, and all that. It's like, in the end of the day, we are Americans. We are in America, and any attack on an attack on anyone is an attack on all of us, and that was understood. But it's like you do not see that today. You're seeing attacks on certain types of people, and everybody's so divided, and it's like nobody stands up for anything anymore. Not like that anymore, at least. Um, it almost seems like, it's just not that it seems, this is what it is. It's um, you have to choose a side, apparently, and I'm bringing this up because I know the other day I was talking about this, and and I don't want it to be, I guess, misconstrued or twisted that I'm here to choose a side or that I'm speaking like a certain side of the aisle. I'm only speaking to what I see and what I understand and what I know. This isn't about red or blue, Republican or Democrat. This is just about being American and what that means. What is the idea behind it? Whether or not people live up to it or not, whether certain institutions have lived up to it or not, or certain corporations or certain establishments or certain citizens, neither here nor there. It's the idea, it's the laws, and going back to that, it's the laws and the regulations and the amendments and all so forth and so forth that are set in place to display what? To display love to yourself, to display love to your neighbor, and to display love to God. When you really look at these things, these are the things that should be apparent to your perception. And I feel like, again, going back to 9/11, in that moment, that's what you saw. People who rose up to the occasion and took action. It was an act of loving yourself, loving your neighbor, and loving God. And that's what took place. And you just don't see that today. It's like, again, everybody's divided, and everybody's attacking everybody. There's no sense of love in any way, shape, or form, other than just loving who you want to love. You get to choose now who you want to love. You don't have to love yourself, and you definitely don't have to love God. Apparently, which that one's kind of always been a thing. Even when I was a kid, it's like, not everybody for sure loved God, not everybody believed in God, but regardless, the fact is there was this beauty of those who are ignorant to this is that even if you don't believe in God, you still love God when you do love your neighbor and you do love yourself. Yeah, it's in those two things you somehow, in a way, still show some sort of love towards God, whether you acknowledge Him or not. So, either way, it's happening. You know, and so, but yeah, that's it's. We're gonna. So now that we're here and on this day, this is what I want to just look back to is can we get back to a time? Uh, Not even to a time, but can we display these very notions of loving your neighbor, loving yourself, and whether you know it or not, you're loving God um, in these times. Um, you know, and it's easier said than done, for sure. It is definitely easier said than done. But again, I challenge you to this. I'm challenging you to this as well as I'm challenging myself to this. And you know, again, I apologize because I know I've fallen short of that many times. So I apologize to God and I apologize to you and I apologize to myself for falling short on those things. Like I said, it's easier said than done, but striving to do these things is it's more honorable to strive to accomplish this than it is to, um, I guess, be distracted or dismayed, right? Um, you know, so again, today's 9/11, and as we look back and remember this time, I just want you guys to remember that there was definitely chaos. There was definitely a lot of pain. I know, I personally came to know uh, people, family members, friends that lost family during that time, um, and yeah, it was a very very chaotic time, very painful time, but it was also a very unifying time where, like I said, it didn't matter who you were, where you came from. We all understood that an attack on any one of us was an attack on all of us. Um, there was this understanding of the value of human life, you know, and then this goes to my next thing because you know whether or not whether or not um, the full manifestation of the three things that I mentioned of loving God, loving your neighbor, and loving yourself are coming to fruition. You know, we took action. We sought out those that, you know, um, I guess caused this pain, and and it, it, it's it's not one of those things that you can do lightly, but apparently it had to happen. You know, what I do know for sure and believe is that God is in control of all things. And um, whether we are in agreement with it or not, that's between you and Him. But um, what I do know for sure is that we took action, and again, in those actions, three things have to be displayed, and that's loving yourself, loving your neighbor, and loving God. Um, on the same topic, again, of just trying to focus in on the love that's being displayed, um, or that has to be put on display, regardless of who you are, where you come from. Um, you know, Another tragedy just happened. And I say tragedy because, again, when you value life, any life that is lost is a tragedy, no matter the circumstance, no matter how it happened. I mean, sure, maybe there's an exception for some people. And I say that very, very lightly because I can't say who deserves to live and who doesn't. But I am pretty sure there are moments that I can say that I myself have thought like, you know, uh, somebody was garbage, a certain person, and them being gone won't affect anything, and probably better off for the world because, they can't hurt nobody anymore. So although there is that, right, that does happen, that is a thing. But I'm not God, so I can't say that it was a righteous thing. But maybe it was. Again, I think if the actions being displayed show any love towards yourself, towards your neighbor, towards God, it's a righteous act. But um, all that to say, again, any life lost though is still a tragedy. I guess the tragedy, even in those moments where you can say that person had it coming, so to speak. Again, this is you know lightly said, but the tragedy is that it's sad that it had to get to that point for that person. You know, um, that's the tragedy there. Now, for someone who we think to ourselves, for those that you love and cherish, and you think to yourself, oh man, like it wasn't their time or shouldn't have happened. That's for sure even more of a tragedy. All that to say that you know, to the fact that this was even a thing when it came to the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. It was a weird thing to see that people were actually praising it, uh, and kind of disturbing, to be honest. You know, specifically, I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't think it. I felt like a lot of the things that were being said held no merit to specifically who she was a person, and it's funny because I know there's these like notions of conspiracy behind the royal family and all that, and could be true. I wouldn't know really, to be honest with you. What do I know about what happens in England or in Britain for that matter? Um, but it was still weird to see people celebrating a death of an old lady and wishing her like a painful death, and then using the sins of the past of England to justify their claim. Oh, because they colonized the world and blasey, 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 and all this other crap. And it was just like, but that wasn't during her time. And during her time, she did a lot of good things um, for her own people, as well as for the Britain in the stage of the world, in the world on the world stage. And it just seemed odd to me that people couldn't seem to differentiate, you know, the past of the colonization of Britain and way before her time, and then the good things that under her, and not even under her rule, because her as a queen is she's more of a symbol more than she is anything. She really holds no power. She's just a symbolic figure of the monarchy or of the royal family and the spirit of England, so to speak. Um, so the fact that even people like even took more recent things and put the blame on her as if she had any power was kind of ridiculous. It just shows us, it really goes to show how people are, I guess, uneducated in these matters. But um, you know, either way, my whole thing that I'm trying to get at is that it's a tragedy that she died, and it shouldn't be praised. It's not something people should be happy about. And then try and justify with things like colonization and the slave trade and any other things that were part of, I guess, Britain's past. Um, and shame on you for if you are one of those people. Um, Even if you, I don't know, disagree with her standard of life, you know, again, leading to the point of harmony that I was bringing up earlier. Um, which is that, if you know anything about harmony, is that it's singers singing in different notes, but finding the harmony of making it work together, even though they're on different notes. And that's the idea of when I think of unity. It doesn't mean that everybody has to agree um, with certain standards or certain principles or certain ideals. I mean, that could only help strengthen the cause or further the existence of something. But overall, living together is a thing of harmony, meaning you can come from different places, you can believe in different things, but still choose to live together and not wish ill upon each other, and still display some sort of love towards each other. Um, and that's what I feel was lost in this whole context when it came to the king, to the queen. It's like, whoa, like, man, like, how can you go so dark with such a thing? Um, so, you know, with that being said, I feel like there's three things I want to say to this whole notion, as we're one, when it comes referring to the queen, like, really look at the history of England while she was queen. Uh, learn about what happened, really truly. Look, as we look back on, back into like 9/11, learn from that moment, right? And this is how you should be treating life when it comes to these overall things of our history, to the present, to what's going to come. And that's learn from the past. You know, you don't want to stay focused on it. You don't want to hone in on it and stay there, but look back, learn from it. There's a lot of good things to learn from the past, whether it was things that are meant to be kept, to keep pursuing, or keep living in, like standards, ideals, and principles. And then there's things that you can say, well, that was bad. How can we do better? How can we progress, right? From those moments, right? Learn from the past, which should allow you to live in the present, right? Live in the present. Stop looking to the past as an excuse for your condition in the moment. You can define your own present, what you're doing in this very moment, right? Only you can decide that. The choices you make are what affect your moment, your present time of being. So live in the present. Stop living in the past. I mean, the idea of that is not even realistic. You're living here. You're living now according to the situation now, according to whatever standard is set now, laws that are set now. So live in this moment with the idea, of course, of looking toward the future. You have to understand that every choice you make now, how you decide to live now, affects your future, but also your your family's future, your the future of your friends and their families, and your neighbor's future, not just your own, the future of those generations to come. How you live now determines that. So if you're going to look towards anything as well, look towards the future, so that you can understand that what you're doing now affects that future. How do you want that future to look for those to come? So, you know, and I could only again revert back to this, as hopefully that future looks something like loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, and loving your neighbors and yourself in that same manner. Um, so that's that. That's all I got for you guys today, as far as that's concerned. Um, I hope it spoke to somebody. I hope somebody was inspired by this, and is moved to I don't know, I guess to learn from their past and live in the present and look towards the future. I hope that this somebody leaves this thinking to themselves, how can I love myself better? How can I love my neighbors better, whether it's family, friends, strangers, and if you're a believer, how can I love God better? And if you're not a believer, uh, and you're thinking you're not sure if God exists, uh, either way, just know that your actions will display a certain type of love towards Him, whether you acknowledge Him or not. Um, so that being said, I hope you guys are blessed with that as much as I was. Um, and there was something else I did want to touch on, and this is a bit sidetracked, so I'm not going to stick onto this too long. But I felt like, as I was thinking about our, I guess our country, our nation, uh, empire, empires like the British Empire and things of the past and all that, and as I think more about, I guess the social climate of things, the political climate of things, uh, I always tell people, like, there are there are there are different outlets out there that you can learn from. So yes, like, hey, if you could have the capacity of being able to sit and read, I always encourage people to read the Bible. There's plenty of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to get from it, instruction on how to live life. But there's many other books out there that also give this knowledge, or at least a form of that knowledge. But then there's also things like, surprisingly, art, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, and or believe it or not, there's even video games that, if you're actually paying attention, you can learn some things from. But all that to say that one of the shows that I watched that I thought was very intriguing when it comes to political power, um, or the culmination of power, the manifestation of it, and how it can affect those seeking it and those around who are, how do you say, the pawns of it all, whatever, so to speak, is Game of Thrones, right? If you have not watched Game of Thrones, I really encourage you to watch it, because it gives you some sort of sense of how political powers work, how nations think on terms of things. When you're thinking about things, you have to, it's really a broader view of it. And that's what I always encourage people to do, is like, look at the bigger picture when it comes to, whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching, whatever you're hearing. Allow it to give you the bigger picture. Even when it comes to whatever information you're gaining, bigger picture, um, and I feel like Game of Thrones really does a good job at that. With that being said, what I did want to kind of touch on was the House of the Dragon, its relation to Game of Thrones, right? And then even the show Ring of Power, and then like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, how that all connects, right? If you haven't watched Lord of the Rings trilogy, or even the Hobbit trilogy, I really encourage you to. There's a lot more to gain other than just the fantastic fantasy imagination of it all. There's real, like, truths behind it that speak to, like, political power, or even social recognition and things of that nature. Not as much as the political thing, but or even more so a sense of value, as I was touching on a few days ago when it came to, like, the American mythology of things, is uh, the ideals, and the principles that are being displayed, you know, in these stories that are being told. with that being said, when you're looking at shows like House of the Dragon and Ring of Power, um, you know, what I will say is House of the Dragon is doing a better job of showing that more than Ring of Power is. I will say though that Ring of Power has some sort of like uh how do you say message to it. It's just not too consistent. Um, I do feel I feel like it's getting a lot of flack for really good reasons. Um, but at the same time, I feel like it's not all bad when it comes to the Ring of Power. House of the Dragon is definitely doing a better job of being consistent with the mythology of Game of Thrones, but I do feel it's almost making the same mistake as it did in the last season, and that's that the pacing seems to be kind of a fast pacing. It's not really taking its time to build these characters, to give a better understanding how they're thinking and how they're making their choices, and that can allow you to have a better reflection of yourself and how you should choose to do things and your role in life and things of that nature. Um, and that's actually the same issue I have with probably Ring of Power is the pacing. It seems like it's like, oh, we got to move the story along quicker and fast. It's almost like they believe there's like a time clock they're against, and I don't know, we have to get all this material out there before the world ends or something, rather than like, hey, take your time to tell a good story that actually teaches people something, that inspires hope and gives the viewer something to look forward to, uh, uh, apart from just the show, but also in real life, and something that's going to, like I said, influence them to be their better self. Um, and so I feel like that's my only issue when it comes to both shows. I really feel the pacing is too quick, and it's not really allowing for great character development like the original first season of Game of Thrones. As it took its time to get to a certain place, though you started seeing the pieces move already, like in certain things. In this new one, it's like things are happening quick. Like I said, it's almost like that last season where things are just happening quick. Time is moving forward quick, and it's not really allowing for proper character development and the soaking in of things. Um, but you know, yeah, that's my only issue. And then same thing with Ring of Power. I think the biggest thing there too is like, I guess it's not sticking too true to the Lord of the Rings mythology, and maybe that's why there's a lot of flack with it. I definitely feel like as I'm watching the show, I think I said this in someone else's live, is that it gives me a lot of like Dragon Age vibes, which is funny because that's not really Ring of Power has nothing to do with Dragon Age, but it definitely feels like I'm watching Dragon Age, uh, like cutscenes and stuff, you know. But nonetheless, like it's I'm still willing to see it through to see where it's going. There's a lot of things happening. I can see how they're trying to the threads that do connect to the Lord of the Rings um, story arc, or um, um, its mythos and stuff. But it definitely needs to. Um, yeah, you know what? It definitely does. I didn't think. I said Skyrim on this other person's chat, and they right away like, "How dare you compare it to Skyrim?" But so it's I, it does kind of give me Skyrim vibes too, but I don't know. I feel more Dragon Age, and I think it's because like they actually have dwarves, and then in Dragon Age you have the ability to give skin tone color to your character, so there is a variety of white elves and black elves and whatever, like so that does exist within Dragon Age, and even Skyrim for that matter. I think that's why I also felt it kind of connected with Skyrim, you know. um so yeah, either way though, I will say the one thing that I will say too, to um Matter of fact, hold on. Before I move forward, let me acknowledge you guys in the chat. Javi, thanks you for jumping in, my brother. Appreciate you. Blessings. Um, Yusuke Yuri. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but you are funny for that. So salute to you for that one. And Lord Koji, my brother, appreciate you, bro. Um, but yeah, what I will say is I do not like their response to the public dismay of it. Like they're doing almost the same thing that the Star Wars did. Like the people of the Star Wars, like they were trying to like claim, oh, you're just racist if you don't like this character, blasey blasey. And it's like that. It's like what? Like what are you talking about? Like this isn't what this is about. At the end of the day, like if you tell a good story, you give a good story to these characters, people will like these characters. But if it's not, then people are going to call you out on it. And that's what I feel like that's all that's happening here. Like give a better story or give time for the story to properly be told, and I think people will appreciate it more. I feel like again that's the issue more so with Ring of Power than anything. That in the first episode they're kind of jumping time right away. I don't know if they sought to do the same thing like the Lord of the Rings trilogy where it gave you the history of all the rings and the lords and the kings and the humans and the elves and the dwarves and Sauron and the Great War and where they were at now. I think that's what they were trying to accomplish. It just didn't hit the same way. But I feel it's because where the story picks up on in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it has no connection with Sauron, right? It starts you off with the hobbits like Frodo and that whole storyline, whatever. And there's only a few characters that can actually tell you about the time of the Great War and Sauron, and it's like the elves, those that can live long, And in this one, they immediately the character that you're kind of focused in right away in the beginning is a character that connects with the war that happened, that she lost her brother, and so there's like this. I don't know. You want us to engage with this. I guess my thing is like you want us to engage with this character that you really didn't give us time to see her growth, and we're supposed to connect with her somehow. The opposite of when you're looking at the characters like Frodo, Samwise, you're seeing them from an innocent stage, and then you're seeing their growth. And same thing like with other characters, like even again, the names are eluding me right now, but what is it? You're seeing a growth of these characters. They're not just thrown in the whim of things. Again, this elf lady, she's like already who she is, and you have to just accept that. And there's no growth in her really. She's like really stubborn, and maybe you're gonna see some sort of growth in her as we move along, but you're not witnessing it yet. And a lot of the characters are like that already in this new series, Ring of Power. Whereas to, I guess House of the Dragon, you're kind of seeing slight growth, but just not as much. It's and I guess the thing with the Ring of Power too is that there's so much mystery still that it's hard to gauge, like if you want to really, like, I guess how to root for these characters or not. They like lack purpose, and I guess. Hey, yo, what are you doing? Okay, sorry. I thought my dog was about to pee over there. But yeah, so I feel like that's the thing with Ring of Power is like these characters they lack some sort of reason for you to attach to them. Again, I say it's like Dragon Age. It's like it definitely gives me Dragon Age vibes. But it definitely needs, I hope we get to a point in that show where it gives you more context and tissue to actually relate to these characters and root for them. So either way, again, I do feel it's still too early though to judge too harshly on shows like Ring of Power or even House of the Dragon. I'm willing to see where they're going with it. So I definitely wanted to talk about it for a bit because like they both have 3 episodes out, and I was like, 3 episodes are kind of giving me a taste of what they're doing, but I'm not going to say definitively that they they're not good. I definitely feel House of the Dragon has been doing a lot of a better job than Ring of Power. But again, we're only 3 episodes in. I'm willing to see this through before I give a final say so on this. um, so yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Again, for anybody who's watching, I mean, watching now, I don't know, keep sharing your thoughts. Though I'm about to hop out, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, and continue the discussion. I mean, if you agree that they are both doing slightly bad but slightly good, or whatever the case may be, share your comments. If you agree, if you don't agree, share it as well. And same thing even with everything else that I discussed. Like, hey, again, like, I want people to understand, like, this whole chop shop thing is like, it's supposed to be critical thinking, free thinking. I extend the invite for people to jump on if they want to jump on. And if you do, feel free to send me a message and say, hey, let me hop on if you have something to say. I guess nobody wanted to hop on right now, so that's fine. But for the future, if you do want to hop on, let me know. Send me a message, and we'll work something out. Again, these are topics that I'm willing to discuss with everybody. So, yeah, I definitely like the idea of conversation. I feel like we can accomplish more when we're sharing thoughts and ideas with each other. So yeah, for anything that I talked about before, whether it's 9/11, whether it's regarding the Queen, politics, faith, whatever the case may be, lifestyle, shows, movies, whatever the case may be, feel free to engage. Feel free to shoot me a message and say, hey, I want to hop on, or next time you get on, please let me know. I'll hop on with you. Because like I said, for me, this is what the Chop Shop is about. It's like, I want people to engage with me on these conversations. I don't want to just be the only one ranting about whatever I'm thinking about. I am here to share my thoughts, but I'm always also interested in hearing other people's thoughts, other people's ideas. And yeah, so we can live in harmony with one another and truly show a sense of love towards each other and towards ourselves, and essentially overall towards God. But again, whether you acknowledge him or not. So again, guys, thank you for tuning in. For those who were live with me right now in the chat, appreciate you guys. For those that are going to watch this later, appreciate you too. Again, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And let's get this thing going, man. Much love. God bless. Peace out. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.